Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'd like to talk about something that I have been noticing lately, and I feel this has to do with a next stage of evolution or an opportunity that we can grab hold of in a way to create a greater relationship with ourselves and also achieve a greater relationship with 5D consciousness. Now, that said, I'm going to break this all down into 3D, 4D, 5D. If you are watching this and you're wondering what the heck is 5D consciousness, I'm going to break it all down. I'm going to go into each 3D, 4D, 5D into great detail. And I'm also going to venture back into 2020 when a lot of change started to shift within humanity. And even if you are not on the spiritual path or the path of self-discovery, the path of unraveling the deeper aspects of yourself, but you happen upon this video, there is an undeniable truth to great change that did happen during 2020 and after, beyond. So I'm going to go back into what happened into great detail. And I'm going to talk about these different levels of consciousness, what they are, what they mean, and where we can go with this. Before I get started, I want to also mention my lighting might be a little bit off. I don't know how long this video is going to be, and I'm kind of subject to the changing of light and clouds and nature. So if the lighting starts to go a little bit off or dark, I apologize ahead of time. If it happens, you can just listen to my voice. You can make yourself dinner or breakfast, whatever time you're watching this video, and just listen to the words. So first, I'm going to touch on 3D consciousness. And the reason why I'm discussing this is because I do see a shift in where we're going and what's happening right now and where we've been, especially where we've been, how we've been transitioning, some of us. And also, if you're watching this and you haven't gone through some kind of big life transition, but you feel like you're about to, this will help shed some light on the process. In 2020, we had an undeniable event that happened that shook the whole world. Funny enough, I just uploaded a module on the Shadow Project of, it's a module, a working module for the trickster archetype. And through my study of a deep dive analysis into the trickster archetype, it really opened my eyes to what happened in 2020, where we all were subject to the trickster. We all, in some way, experienced the trickster archetype within our outer environment, the outer world, and within ourselves. And first, the trickster archetype is part of the collective unconscious. The archetypes that we can explore within ourselves and within our world and within others are archetypes that we all share. They define our common behaviors and traits and perceptions and allow us to integrate these archetypes when we can see them and when we can understand them. When they are unintegrated, these archetypes basically influence us unconsciously, and they can show up in our relationship dynamics because relationships do mirror our inner self in some kind of way, right? We are all mirroring one another in some kind of way. We are all reflections. We all learn from one another. We learn and get taught. We learn and we teach one another. So we're teachers to one another, and we are learning from one another at any given time. So when we talk about archetypes, we are looking at deeper aspects of our behavioral patterns, of our traits, of aspects of ourselves, our perceptions that we may not necessarily understand or be able to recognize within our conscious level of awareness or within any given time of the day when we are functioning at a normal pace or rhythm. When we are functioning at a normal pace and rhythm, we may reach a point of a crisis or chaos or disruption or a challenge, and that's when these dormant archetypes can be most active. When we are faced with something that feels unfamiliar, or even when we're on our own and we're having a challenge, overcoming something or understanding a deeper part of ourselves or understanding a part of life or relationships. Again, we can go into these archetypes to understand the complexities of what's going on within ourselves, and also maybe even relationship dynamics or even different components of our reality. So looking back at 2020, we encountered the trickster. And the trickster is the archetype of chaos and disruption, so that we can see the truth within ourselves in reality if we take a moment to reflect on the happenings of our within ourself and within our life. Disruption is good because it allows us to question our reality. It allows us to question ourselves. It allows us to look at ourselves a little bit differently. It allows us to look at our life and the world a bit differently. And in 2020, there was, of course, we know what happened. There was, we'll call it the virus, that spread around the world, but it also disrupted human behavior and human conditioning. And many people responded to it differently. And this also goes into an article that I uploaded at the Odyssey of Self about the eyes, the physical manifestations that happen within our eyes due to formative experiences of trauma, difficulties, the distortion of reality that happens when we go through traumas, difficult events, when we don't want to see the truth about ourselves and we don't want to see the truth about reality because it's too difficult. And this can be passed down patterns and beliefs that become embedded and that become part of our reality that aren't our own. They can be part of our experiences that we go through that we haven't been able to process yet. So these two, funny enough, these two articles are tying very much into this very episode here, regarding what's happening on a bigger scale, because they're actually quite profound when you really think about it, about our eyes being the perceptions to reality, how we see and perceive and interpret the world, sending signals to our mind, and also connecting with the deeper aspects of our mind, the unconscious, the subconscious. And the deeper aspects of our mind are what drive our behaviors and our interpretations of reality based on what we've seen in the past, based on what we haven't been able to process, based on the truth that we've seen and what we've uncovered within ourselves, therefore having either a clear lens or a distorted lens. So we can have different types of lenses based on the deeper relationship within ourselves. So if we haven't explored our deeper layers within ourselves, we will most likely have a distorted or foggy lens. But the more layers that we uncover within ourselves and clean or clear within our unconscious, the clear lens we are going to have on the truth of reality. So in 2020, we had the trickster archetype show up, and it showed up for us to face chaos and disruption within ourselves and within relationships and within the world, within life itself. And many of us went through a big breakthrough. There are many layers to this, and I'm going to take a more surface level approach to this conversation because it can go quite deep and quite multidimensional and spiritual and often different directions, but I'm going to keep it on the surface for this conversation. When 2020 happened, a lot of us were forced to face different realities within ourselves. The trickster archetype had shown up to create the disruption, and we were given a moment to look at our lives differently, to look at our reality differently if we chose to work with it consciously. And there was quite a significant portion or demographic of humanity that branched off and started to seek and search within themselves. I mean, we were given a lot of time to sit with ourselves, to be with ourselves, which truthfully gave a very powerful moment to do this inner work and to dive within ourselves and question our path and our life and reality and where we're going. And it really did unearth a lot within us. So there was a specific demographic that took hold of this and went into a deep dive of seeking and searching and analysis and healing and transformation. And that process also drove a lot of people into the spiritual realm of exploration. Some people went into esoteric studies. Some people went into different types of healing modalities. And again, to search and to seek and understand oneself more. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to jump into 3D consciousness. Now, 3D consciousness is a lower form of consciousness. We have different levels of consciousness within ourselves. I feel there have been misconceptions about 3D, 4D, 5D, which I'm going to get into in a moment. And this is leading to the end, the finale of where I feel we are going, or where we can go if we feel called to it, or we feel that it can help us further the relationship with ourselves. The 3D is the lower form of consciousness. So the 3D consciousness is basically tied to our conditioning and our patterns of ego, of our personification that we have built that has been part of our identity based on our old wounds. This can attach us to our material possessions. It's a very dense energy. It creates a lot of fear, resistance, resentment, guilt, grief, shame. It happens very unconsciously, but it can also be part of our conscious level of awareness where we are realizing it, or we can see it within others who are operating very unconsciously in their modes of anger, disruption, hatred, greed, guilt, shame, anger, etc., etc. The 3D consciousness is the lower form of consciousness because it has not yet evolved into a greater state of wholeness, of a greater state of consciousness within one's self. In order to get to a wholeness, advanced consciousness is what Carl Jung has called it, or to transcendence, or to 5D consciousness, which I will explain in a moment, we have to go through the deeper realms within ourself, the unconscious. The subconscious is good. But I feel the subconscious, I was introduced to the subconscious mind probably 10 years ago when I had a severe head injury when I was a cyclist. I was in a race and I had a pretty epic accident where I sustained a severe head injury. I was not properly looked at in the medical system. When I went to the hospital, I was basically given medication and told to have a nice day and take care. And I was left with a prolonged post-concussion syndrome, which drove me into severe states of depression, stress. I had panic attacks, etc. But the reason why I'm touching on this is because through the process of going through a very difficult 2 years of post-concussion syndrome, when I finally found out what I had, I went deep into studying the brain and the mind. And this led me into understanding the subconscious. This is when everything was subconscious. Subconscious reprogramming, rewiring, change your habits, change your life, these messages and information about rewiring your brain and creating a decent amount of brain health in one's life, which I was studying a lot. So I integrated a lot of subconscious reprogramming techniques, subconscious health mindset, retraining my brain, breaking poor habits. And this was also when The Secret was really quite popular. Actually, it was popular before that even, but the whole, I feel, visualization and manifestation talks were becoming very prevalent and quite common also at that time, where I was starting to dip into some of those practices. And again, it was in the subconscious, retrain your mind, align with abundance, create your dream life. And which is all fine and it's great, but again, it's still a level, it's still somewhat of a surface level. And it wasn't until the last several years where I understood that there's a level deeper, where there's still a level deeper to go. And it's the hardest level to understand and to break into because it is the most nebulous, unexplainable aspect of ourself. And the greater conditioning that we have in the 3D landscape, the lower states of consciousness, again, being influenced by our beliefs that we can't see, operating by anger, the trigger moments, saying things or doing things in haste, the uncontrollable reactions, making really poor choices that aren't in alignment with our highest good, greatest potential, our true self, working and operating out of our ego, our personas, striving for a certain type of status and wealth and position in life. Those are all part of the 3D consciousness that are built from a reality that is not our true, built from our true self. It's not built from our true self. It's a false reality, but it feels to be true because we become very used to it. We've lived in it our entire life. Therefore, it feels real. Yet it may drive us into depression. It may drive us into addictive behavior. It may drive us into really bad decisions and toxic behavioral patterns because deep, deep, deep down inside, there's something off. There's something off because we are out of alignment with a greater relationship with ourself and with something greater, meaning the universe, meaning divine, meaning source, meaning life itself. Even if you're not spiritual, you don't have to be. There's something greater that we are all part of. And when we lose that connection, when we lose that understanding, and we build a life and a persona based on the programs and the conditioning that we have been raised under or that we have been influenced by, we lose ourself in that process. Therefore, we become depressed. We become alcoholics. We become addicts. We become suicidal. We go through the whole spectrum of the fragmentation of self. And so that is part of 3D consciousness when we're living in this solidified, I called it the shell of lies years ago. I had a visualization of being in an egg and going through these layers. It's almost as if when we've been conditioned our whole life, or we've gone through these life experiences and we built a story about ourselves and we maintain that story because it feels right and it feels that it's important that we maintain that story, that we stay on track, that we hold the family together, that we stay in relationships even though they're unhealthy because we feel responsible for it. You know, we hold on to these stories and they become so hard. They become such a solidified aspect of our being. It's so hard to break out of, because when we break out of it, it can be very scary of what's on the other side. We may not have ever experienced anything but those stories. So when we crack through these layers, these shells around ourselves that have been built, maybe built even out of safety and protection, maybe built from fear, maybe built from a story, again, a persona, an identity, right? These shells become very solidified within ourselves and they become part of our consciousness, but they also suppress our deeper aspects of ourself and the deeper relationship with greater forms of consciousness within ourself. So that's 3D consciousness. 3D consciousness is the attachment to the physical, money, material possessions, identity of self, the stories that we live by, the stories that we feel we need to maintain and control, and also, yes, control the need to feel safe and secure. And this all comes from fear. It all comes from survival. It comes from the base, the base foundation of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like right at the bottom, base survival, basic needs. When we start to break out of this and realize, oh, there's something more to reality. And this is what happened in 2020 when there was a big shakeup in our world where a significant demographic or a significant portion of our greater demographic or our greater society or greater reality or humanity, however you want to position it, started to branch off and question reality. This trickster archetype showed up to shake things up, to say, hey, I'm going to show you a different reality. I'm going to show you something different about yourself. I'm going to show you the truth about life. I'm going to show you something, or bend reality, or push your boundaries, create chaos, shatter illusions. And shattering illusions are very, very difficult to understand and to comfortably navigate. Shattering illusions means that we have to possibly face the destruction of what we've grown, what we've created, and what we've become familiar with. And that alone can create a lot of inner turmoil. There's a process called grieving illusions, which I'm going to create a whole other episode on. But this is part of what happened for a lot of people that drove a lot of us, myself included, maybe you watching, I know a lot of people here have gone through it, into the dark night of the soul. And the dark night of the soul is the dismantling of the ego. And it with it creates a lot of turmoil and inner pain. And it really is the death of the old self. And everyone's going to experience it maybe a little bit differently. I sure went through many years of it and many different forms of it. Some were very sharp, some were extremely deep and very painful and very confusing, where it pushed me to the edge of my life. And I had never gone that deep and that far within myself before. But I had to go to the edge, and I had to challenge my edge in order for me to break through my limitations and to become more of myself. And through that process, I have been able to learn more about these deeper aspects of myself and see more about reality, understand more about life and the world, and shed the layers that I had been carrying for years, lifetimes, generations. So when we're moving into 4D consciousness, now we know what 3D is, right? 3D is the relationship with our persona, our ego, operated by our shadow and by our unconscious beliefs and patterning, the aspects of ourselves that we can't see and we have not recognized, holding on to material possessions, anchoring in, trying to control, etc., right? 4D consciousness is moving into the pathway of the shattering of illusions, of breaking through these patterns, dissolving our ego, dissolving our personas, because there can be plural, and going into the unconscious, into the deeper aspects of ourself, breaking through the, I call it the ossified layer that has been constructed through our conditioning, that has taken form throughout our entire life. The further we go, the further we move in our life without navigating our unconscious, the harder the layer is going to be. When we are operating unconsciously, or when we are operating solely on our conscious level of awareness through critical analysis, through rational thought, through over-intellectualizing, without questioning our deeper self or exploring our deeper self, we will create a very hard layer, an ossified, solid layer that's going to be really, really, really hard to break through. Not that it can't happen, it can at any time. But the further we go in our life, the harder that layer becomes, because we become more conditioned. We become more conditioned and used to operating a certain way and functioning a certain way, all making sense and being like everyone else and acting like everyone else and behaving a certain way and being in alignment with everything out there and everyone, and not staying in our lane and not challenging the status quo, not challenging ourselves. And then over time, we get sick, we become depressed, we lose ourselves, we don't feel right somewhere deep inside, etc. Can go into many different areas. Our body can definitely respond to that, or will eventually. But when we start to break through that layer and challenge ourselves and challenge what has felt comfortable, even if it pushes ourselves and even if it feels uncomfortable within ourselves, we are going to understand more about ourselves. We're going to break through these layers, and we're going to start to create a deeper relationship with something greater within ourselves. Now, when we go into the unconscious, this is the root. This is the very origin. Our unconscious is so deep within ourselves. And I mentioned it in another video where I feel, I heard this before and I totally agree with it. The unconscious is the gateway towards the higher realms, meaning our higher self, the relationship with the universe, the understanding of something greater, something more. However you want to look at it, when we open ourselves up to something greater, we will form a greater relationship with something more. If you want to call it the universe, the divine, God, source, whatever it is. shed the layers and the illusions of the 3D consciousness, we move into 4D consciousness through this process. Now, 5D consciousness, you may have heard folks such as Joe Dispenza. There were many others talking about 5D consciousness. Lori Ladd, I don't know if you follow her. I haven't actually heard of her in a long time. There were other folks who were chiming in a lot during 2020 and onward about 5D consciousness, and it became quite a big topic. Everyone was like, not everyone, but a lot of people were really into this 5D consciousness, shift of reality, shift of life, shift of self, where I feel a lot of many people who are on this path and searching for more within themselves really got lost within the spiritual movement and within the spiritual, I guess, industry or society or circles in some kind of way, which I'll get to in just a moment. Where 5D consciousness is, and I feel this is where things are getting a little bit muddied or a bit misunderstood in a way, where 5D consciousness is a part of ourself, where we are able to understand within ourself that we truly are limitless, meaning when we reach 5D consciousness, we are no longer operating out of our fears. We are no longer tied to our personas. We are no longer controlled by our ego or by our unconscious false beliefs and limitations and aspects of our psyche that have not been healed or recognized, or unintegrated archetypes within ourself, or especially our shadow. But what happened during this whole switch after 2020 and onward, there has been a whole movement of trying to reach 5D consciousness through different modalities or experiences within ourselves. If it is through plant medicine, if it is through altered states of reality, if it is through meditation, and if it is through any kind of way of getting that, reaching the connection with something greater. I feel there has been a big push and a big desire to reach that 5D consciousness, which has created a lot of bypassing and has created a strong desire to move towards something that feels really good. And when we are accessing that feeling of bliss, of euphoria, of a utopian reality, of something that is so beautiful and healing, when we come back to reality, we may drop into these patterns and experiences that we have not yet faced or we have not yet processed. And we all go through these motions. If you're doing this work, you will go through these motions of experiencing a higher state of consciousness. This includes unconditional love. When you have gone through your own stages and levels of forgiveness, of radical acceptance, of letting go, of detaching from attachments, where you have let go of your fears, when you are operating out of something more expansive and open, when you are connected with synchronicities and understanding synchronicities and listening to synchronicities, when you are in a strong relationship with your intuitive self, when you're with your intuition, when you can interpret your dreams and your intuitive insights and nudges and intuitive feelings and senses, when you have deepened the relationship with your senses and your feelings and your emotions and able to understand them and let them lead rather than suppress them. That's all part of 5D consciousness. So 5D consciousness is not out there, it's in here. And it's the ability to bring the relationship of your greatest self into yourself and into your being, not by feeling bad or wrong when you are feeling off or when you are down or when you're working through these false beliefs and these patterns and the shadow and the difficulties that are within you. And I feel where we are going and where we are transitioning to in the next stage of development is bringing the relationship with something greater into a relationship with self and grounding into our body and creating a greater relationship with our body and with the earth. And so you might have heard also that the earth holds a higher level of consciousness, maybe 5D consciousness as well, or maybe even higher. When you're in nature, you feel great, you feel amazing, it's beautiful, it's quiet, it's healing, it's lovely, it's grounding. And I feel where we're going, there is a beautiful opportunity for us to begin creating a relationship within ourselves in a deeper way and understanding what 5D consciousness means within ourselves. The trick is, I should say, within ourselves and within the earth, the actual earth. I'm talking about, not the, well, part of the world as well, but I'm talking about our relationship with the earth. I've heard also Zach Bush mention this, and it was really interesting. I had another friend of mine mention something similar at the exact same time, of also myself starting to feel that there's a shift beginning to happen. And if you know Zach Bush, he worked in the medical industry, and he began to see the truth within the medical industry, realizing that the medical industry is not geared towards true healing and true restorative practices to allow us humans to heal and to understand ourselves more on a deeper level. And he's been a huge pioneer for restoring a greater relationship with our bodies. And I do feel I feel that there's something coming in as far as a next wave or an opportunity for us to move from trying to search and seek outward or try to reach a greater state of euphoria or connection with the universe, with something greater, the spiritual landscape, but bring it into the relationship with ourself and what that means and feels like at any given time of our day, not by bypassing, because we have to go through 4D first. We have to go through our shadow and our unconscious and create a greater relationship with ourselves. And the only way we're going to be able to do it is by spending time with ourselves, diving into the layers within ourselves, doing our shadow work, understanding our beliefs and our patterns and our behaviors. And not from a place of judging ourselves or feeling ashamed, but if there is judgment and there is shame, that is a part of the shadow and a part of our unconscious aspects that do need to be looked at. And once we have dissolved them, once we have leaned into them and worked with them and created separation with the entanglements of these deeper shadowy aspects and feelings and emotions and thoughts, we do begin to dissolve them and create more wholeness within as we've integrated those emotions, we've integrated aspects of ourselves that we may feel ashamed of, that we may feel guilty for, that we may have resentment over, that we may feel angry about. When we've really leaned into it and understood it, we integrate the true source and origin of those emotional patterns so that we can move into a greater state of self, not by chasing and not by searching and flying over here and there and going into plant ceremonies and having someone try to heal us. That's part of the old system that doesn't work, that's been carried over into this area of spiritual growth and personal growth, etc. Where in the society of the old world, of what doesn't work, of being medicated and having quick fixes for everything and quick solutions, that same conditioning is being brought over into the spiritual, into some of it. And we do this unconsciously. We do it unconsciously because this is how we've been conditioned. Fix me. I want someone to do it for me. This is too hard. It's too uncertain. It's too painful. I want it to go away. But the more we chase something greater, the more we run away from the pain and run away from what we don't like or feeling bad or wrong. We're not allowing ourselves to lean into it and discover it for ourselves and break the patterns within ourselves for ourselves. When we gain the tools within ourselves to break our own patterns and to discover more of ourselves and to integrate and to transmute, then we ourselves are becoming more empowered and more aligned with who we truly are, therefore creating a greater relationship with 5D consciousness. That is the pathway to 5D consciousness. Nobody can make it happen for us. Nobody can take us there for us. Nobody can take us on a ship and fly us off into 5D consciousness. Well, we can, but when we come back to reality, it's going to be that much more difficult because we haven't faced what we need to face in order to move into our own 5D state of consciousness, higher level of consciousness. And this follows the Maslow's hierarchy of needs of, excuse me, moving into a state of self-actualization and transcendence, but also, as Carl Jung has described it, advanced consciousness when we are whole and complete within ourself. And that moves us into 5D consciousness, and that moves us into a greater relationship with our body and with the earth. I feel that is the next stage, the next step, when we have understood ourselves so deeply, when we have understood our behaviors and our patterns and become true and honest with ourselves. And again, nobody and nothing can do it for us. We have to do this ourselves. We have to sit with ourselves. We have to analyze ourselves. We have to inquire within ourselves. We have to observe our patterns, especially. We have to go deeper to see what are our beliefs that are driving our behaviors and that are manifesting in our physical form in our body. And I am going to be also talking about this more on my channel, about how our behaviors and our beliefs and our stored emotions and memories from the past manifest in our body. And this is the wholeness and completion that is going to move us into the next state of being, into this 5D consciousness. And you can even, I would say, reflect on what 5D consciousness means for you. How will it feel within yourself? I know many of us are dipping in and out of these states of consciousness at any given time. And then that is part of the transition and the part of the growth that we are going to experience. But you can also contemplate on what 5D consciousness means within you, the relationship with self, the relationship with yourself in relationship to the universe, in relationship to the earth, and relationship with other people and the whole, the greater context. How does that feel within yourself? That is going to be a state of completion. And it's going to feel very different. It is a completely new way of existing. And I do feel there is something happening where there's a transition into a greater relationship of self. I feel that is the next stage in some kind of way. A friend of mine who I spoke with as well about this, he's been in the industry for a long time. And he also is now called to work more with the breath and more with the body and more with the earth. And I do feel there's something here that's bringing us back into the relationship with ourselves. So 2020 and beyond has really catapulted some people into really searching and seeking and healing, and it was great and it was perfect in so many ways. And I feel now there's an opportunity to bring it back into ourself, to return to a greater relationship with ourself, mind, within our mind. We have to go through the layers of our mind, understanding our patterns, our ego. The shadow is essential. I can't stress it enough. Our belief patterns, our behavioral patterns, our unconscious, the psyche, our intuition, our senses, figuring that out, creating a relationship with that. And when it comes into balance and it comes into coherence and equilibrium, a congruence with all, we are going to be able to form a new sense of self, right? So we needed to go into the pendulum swinging, into these different motions of self and into the different aspects of ourself in order to find that pace within and that rhythm and sink into now this new sense of self that is more grounded, that is more whole and more connected. And when we arrive into a greater level of consciousness without the attachments, without the dualities, dualistic natures, without the influences of our ego and our shadowy aspects that we haven't been able to see, and our unconscious components that have not been integrated, that's going to be a whole new level and a whole new experience of yourself and being in this world and in this reality. So I wanted to share that. I feel truly this is the next stage of evolution. And on my channel now, I am going to be dedicating more of my work towards this practice, or at least to understand your body more and the beliefs and the patterns, as I feel this is an integral part of the process. And if you would like to go deeper into these aspects of yourself, I do have the Odyssey of Self over on Substack. It's only $8 a month. I have the body codex. I talk about the body and the behavioral patterns with practical steps to decode your body's messages, and plus the library of light with discussions and topics and themes. So they're alternating content pieces week by week. I also have the Shadow Project, which is more intensive, and there's a lot more work over there for understanding your shadow, your unconscious, working with archetypes, understanding the deeper aspects of self that need to be uncovered in order for us to reach that state of wholeness and self-actualization, transcendence, authenticity, all the good stuff. All right, so the links are below in the description area. I hope this video found you when you need it the most. Until next time, take care.